Hi, my name is Judith Leora, and I'm a playwright, and I have a short play in the Together LA Festival, which is coming up soon on Twitch. And if you're interested in hearing more about it, tune into our conversation coming up next. I think I initially fell in love with theater. I actually grew up in a musical slash theater family. My dad sang opera. And so I spent half my childhood living in Germany, where he sang a lot, and some in this, and back in the States where he sang. And I always, in high school, I loved theater, but I really fell in love with the playwriting side of theater when as part of my theater major in college, I had to take a playwriting class. And I think everyone ends up starting out in acting, because it's like, when you're a teenager, what else are you going to do? So I had to take a playwriting class, and literally, like, after the first page of, like, you have to write a scene where two people are fighting over an object, like, I was like, oh, this is what I like to do. Like, this is what I feel totally comfortable doing this. It's fun. I connect to it. And I was like, oh, this is what I'm definitely going to do with my life. My plays are very political. They're comedies, and they're very usually on political themes of what's going on in our culture. So I tend to be inspired by something that's going on. And then usually suddenly I have an idea of how I want to write about that topic, if it's like abortion or the death penalty or political correctness. And then usually once I have that basic germ of an idea, I think for a long time, like for 6 months, just while I'm like living my life, it's like bouncing around in my head. And then I tend to, like all writers, I'm really bad with deadlines. I'm really bad with self-motivation, but I'm good with deadlines. I usually set up some sort of situation where I have to get the play done. Like, I'm going to have a reading with a writer's group or a group of people I know. And then I usually just bang it out in a couple weeks. So that's usually my process. It's a lot of thinking, and then there's a meme that goes around Facebook where it's, the writing process is procrastination. And then the last like 2% of the process is like crying while typing while crying, which is also my process. You're like, I have to do it now. I think as a human being, I'm very interested in politics, and I think it determines so much of our lives. I spent half my childhood, my dad sang a lot in Berlin. And so I spent half my childhood living in Berlin. And there, when you're in Germany and you're learning that history, you realize what a big part of politics people's lives are and how much it can affect your whole life. And so to me, that's super interesting. And everything I write tends to be comedic. So I'm always looking for an angle into the topic that makes it really accessible, and that makes it, a comedic premise. Especially because I think Americans, we're very funny people. I think we have a really strong comedic tone, and I think it's a really easy way to talk about difficult things that we don't necessarily want to talk about. I've actually had 2 productions there. I had a play that was in a reading series, and somebody there passed it on to the Victory, and they were interested in producing it. And that was 2 years ago. And so they produced that play, and it did really well. It was called Show Pony. And they're just so wonderful to work with. They're great people, and they really just love theater, and they love producing good theater. And so I worked with them once, and then I worked with them a year later again. We produced another play of mine called Elijah. And so when this came up, they asked me, do you have a 10-minute play that we could do as part of the Together LA Festival? And I was super excited because, it's been such a frustrating time to not be doing as much theater and to not be connecting to people. And the entire process was over Zoom. And they've done, I can't wait for people to see it, just because they've done this amazing thing where they're like, making it people really be able to interact. The actors really seem like they're in the same space. So it's just been really great to be working on a small show, to be working on a show again during this time. This play, I started thinking of it like in 2016. It's a kind of about the interplay between how people vote and gender dynamics. So it came out of that. And I really what happened right after the election in 2016. We had the Women's March. We had a lot of discussion of a lot of white women who voted for Trump, who didn't vote for Trump, intersectional feminism, who's on the same page with each other, who's advocating for each other. So to me, it's like probably one of the most important topics right now, because on the right, you have a more homogenous group of people, and on the left, you have a more diverse group of people, and how do those different groups interplay with each other, and how do they pursue the same goals? So there was a little idea in my head of how to write about that topic. And it starts with a couple trying to pick which movie to go to, which in my experience can be a very fraught experience of trying to figure out. It's just the same as if you're picking a movie on Netflix. Sometimes it can be a 2-hour discussion before you pick something. So that's the beginning premise, and then it goes somewhere else. It has a little twist at the end, so I don't necessarily want to go into that. But it starts with a couple who are trying to pick out a movie because they want to go out, and their neighbor keeps coming over to their apartment because they're using their apartment for different reasons. They've let them use their kitchen, and the topic builds and builds. So it ends up really talking about this dynamic between men and women and how we manage these relationships versus the politics of the real world. I think one thing I'd love to mention about the festival and my play is just that it's super innovative what they're doing. Like, we've all been watching Zoom readings. We've all been watching really high level of Zoom readings, like stuff like Disney did a sing-along, which was basically Zoom. But this, the way they're using technology and editing it together and making it more immediate with the actors in the same space virtually, it's super exciting. And this is a first step towards something. I think it's different than theater, but I think it's important, because we're a really global community that are all over the world, and to be able to create art with people, even when we go back to a normal existence, to be able to create art with people in different spaces and time zones, I think that's incredibly exciting. And I think it could create connections between people in the world which haven't been possible before. What I want the audience to get out of this play is what I usually want when I see a play, which is two things: that I remember it, which I actually find to be a very high bar, because very often I watch things and the next day I'm just like, I don't even remember what I watched. And that it makes me think further, whether it works or not. I mean, I certainly hope my piece works, but I'm interested in art in any format, in great TV, in great film, and great theater, where a week later, I'm still processing it a little bit and thinking about the ideas that it raised. So that's why I hope it starts a conversation with people of what are these super personal dynamics in my personal life, in my relationships, especially between men and women, and how do they play out in the real world, and how do they influence our politics? I'm really excited about with the Together LA Festival is kind of what I've been excited about during the whole pandemic, is one of the only perks of this, situation has been that it's wonderful to see work from other theaters. I lived in Los Angeles for a long time, and now I live back in New York. I'm originally from New York. And it's wonderful for places to have readings, and theaters in San Francisco, theaters in LA, and I can just log on and watch, or different, big playwriting festivals. I hope there's some aspect of that stays as part of our culture, because I think it's democratized the theater world in a way that it really needed to be. There's no reason why, if you're in the Upper Peninsula of Michigan, that you shouldn't be able to turn on to great and interesting theater from all over the world, from all over the United States, from all over the world. And I think that's incredibly exciting. I'm excited to tune in every weekend, this weekend again, and next weekend when our show is the 17th, October 17th. And I'm excited to see all the different work. Well, I think the LA and Southern California audience definitely must watch this festival, because LA has, and the whole area has, a really diverse and interesting theater scene, and it's incredibly important that it survive. And this is a great way, and it's also supporting, Color of Change, a charity that's incredibly important. So I think it's a real way to support the theater community, to bring everyone together, and to see, the variety of all these theaters that exist and what they're producing, and to, keep that community going. Because as we just heard here in New York, Broadway and maybe some of the other smaller theaters can come back earlier, but Broadway's not coming back until, summer of 21 at the earliest. So it's incredibly important that we keep doing things and supporting theater and being invested in theater during this intermittent time here. I mean, the Victory Theater Center is incredibly important to both Los Angeles and the community it's in, because it's producing new plays. And it's producing a really high level of quality theater that's super accessible. And it's in Burbank. And it's people need to get together and have experiences together. And I think going through this last how long has it been? 7, 8 months, 9 months, has taught us how much we miss that. Like, we're pack animals, and we want to get together and have human experiences together and feel things together. And you get an energy from other people. And when you're challenged and you see new ideas, it's different when you're in a room with a group of people. So I think it's incredibly important that these theaters that have a history, these theaters that produce great work, survive and stay as part of the fabric of Los Angeles. If you've enjoyed this conversation about theater in LA and about specifically the Together LA Festival and my play, definitely check it out. See the shows. My play is called You, Me, and Margaret Atwood. And there is a Margaret Atwood in the play, and you'll have to tune in to see exactly who that is.